Hello everyone, this is Jake from CINECALIBER. In today's video I will be reviewing the Deadpool and Wolverine film. This is one of my most anticipated films of the 2024 year, and if anyone wants to see a more detailed analysis of those, there will be a link in the description below for that. But yeah guys, we're going to get right into it. I had seen this film on my birthday, and I was very excited for it, and I actually thought it lived up to the hype for the most part. But let me tell you, the MCU, they have been kind of trying to find their own identity since Avengers Endgame. So I really felt like the last two good films that were pretty solid since Endgame were Spider-Man No Way Home and Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, and this film, Deadpool and Wolverine. But yeah, it definitely arguably the best film they've come out with in a while. It does feel like they kind of found their mark here. Whether they will continue that remains to be seen. But basically, a little bit of background. This is Sean Levy's second time directing a Deadpool film, and his third time directing a film with Ryan Reynolds, and the first time doing so under the MCU banner, as the first two X-Men were strictly 20th Century Fox before they were merged with the MCU. So basically the film was also written by Sean Levy and Ryan Reynolds, as well as Rhett Reese, Paul Wernick, and Zeb Wells. Reese and Wernick are returning from the other two Deadpool films, and Zeb Wells is known for his work on Robot Chicken. But pretty decent amount of talent basically making this film for the most part. And then we're going to kind of just get into the plot summary here, guys. And here we go. With his days as the merc with the mouth behind him, Wade Wilson toils away in civilian life. But when the TVA tells Wade about an existential threat that could mean the end of his world, Wade must reluctantly suit up once more with an even more reluctant Wolverine in order to stop Wade's world from being wiped out. So we're going to go into what was a hit with this film, The Good. The biggest highlight for me in this film was the on-screen chemistry between Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman as Deadpool and Wolverine, respectively. These guys are best friends in real life, and they do a tremendous job in just bringing these two characters to life together. There are so many hilarious moments between the two in this film, and really the film couldn't have been as good without them. I would say arguably the best scenes are with them together. But yeah, when they're together, it's always funny. It could be violent. You never know what you're going to get. There's one scene in particular, which I recently just found out that Ryan Reynolds wrote for Hugh Jackman, was when they're basically insulting each other in a car. And man, that scene was just such a heartfelt and hilarious moment for the two. And just again shows how great of actors they are. I also really like Disney's decision to keep the same tone for this film, just like the other two Deadpool films. Arguably, probably the best decision that they could have done, and it also proves that they can do R-rated stuff without it messing with their family-friendly image that they're so crazy about. That was a huge concern of mine, was, hey, Deadpool 3 is coming to the MCU. Are they going to keep the same tone that they've been doing with Deadpool 1 and 2? And I'm very happy they did. For example, there was an opening sequence that was hilarious and a really bloody good time. Had me cackling from ear to ear. Great way to start off the film. Just the overall jokes in this film, to me, landed a lot better than the other two, particularly because of the metaverse, and just the jokes for meta were just so hilarious. They kind of just constantly made fun of the multiverse, and then Fox being basically bought out by Disney. There was some really great fourth wall breaking for the most part, but it does maintain a pretty strong narrative throughout the film, so it flows pretty nicely how they're able to break the fourth wall and kind of just give us a nice consistent storyline. It's a really good mix of just dramatic character building and humor as well with that. So what else did I like about this film? So another big part of this film was the fan service cameos. They did a tremendous job with those in this film. I feel like when they did it in Doctor Strange 2 Multiverse of Madness, it just did not hit as well as it could have. In that film, the cameos were basically used as like a cheap plot device. And I feels like Marvel kind of learned from that, and they handled them more like Spider-Man No Way Home, where the cameos were actually a part of the story, and just did a huge tribute to them throughout. And it just, like I said, it's like a great tribute to the old 20th Century Fox films. I don't want to spoil too much if anyone hasn't seen the film yet, but a tremendous job with using the cameos and just giving us a great time with those. But that, guys, was everything for me that was a hit with this film. We're going to go into what was a miss, the bad. So it wasn't a perfect film. It still had some issues. The film did feel a bit like convoluted at times with the writing. And it feels like the impact of that is because of there's just so many different writers going into the plot, and that it basically made the film feel a little bit all over the place at times. And plus the writer's strike didn't help it. It just truly felt like they went one way, then they kind of stopped and went another way. And I think it does have to do with the writer's strike that kind of affected that. So just some slight spoilers here. They go over, and just to kind of show how the writing is kind of iffy, they go over this whole like anchor being, and it didn't make sense whatsoever to me. And not that the anchor being didn't make sense, just that Deadpool's world, his anchor being didn't make sense. So the fact that Logan, he's like the anchor being, and that the version of him was the one from the 2017 film, it doesn't fit the time period whatsoever. Deadpool 3 takes place in the year 2024, whereas Logan takes place in the year 2029. And by that point, all mutants are pretty much extinct. It wouldn't make sense for Wade to have even found Logan's body yet, as it's like a 5-year difference, unless they're saying that when Logan dies in 2029, it affects his timeline in 2024. But again, that to me just makes no sense. It feels like they didn't really think about that when they decided to incorporate that as part of the film. I really feel like they kind of just dropped the ball with that, so to speak. But, maybe I'm missing something. But to me, it didn't gel very well. Then there's another example here. In the beginning of the film, Wade speaks with Happy Hogan in the year 2018 in the main timeline, so to speak, where, the original Avengers were and all that. I just thought it was weird they didn't really bother to explain how in the hell he even got there to even apply for being an Avenger, being that Fox is a different universe, so they've said. I mean, don't get me wrong, it is later explained in a scene that he used Cable's time-traveling powers to go to that multiverse, but it was like a quick plot element to catch if you didn't really pay attention. And like I said, that whole scene left me baffled until they really explained it later on, which they didn't really explain. It was just more of like, hey, this is what I did. I thought they kind of missed the mark a little bit there too. They could have maybe explained it a little better, or maybe just had Cable and him go together there. It just really threw me off when I saw that scene. I'm like, how is this possible? But okay. Another issue I had too was the villains, as I call it in the MCU, the villain strike again in this film. It's been an issue since the early days of the MCU. Both villains, Cassandra Nova and Paradox, they're really clumsy villains. Cassandra, as cool as she is in this film, is really given no depth to make us really invest in her as a character. And again, that's been the same thing for most of the Marvel villains. She's just kind of like on another power trip, in pursuit to be the one mighty being, and it's such a redundant villain arc at this point that I really wish they could just kind of figure this out. I mean, they've done some really tremendous villain building with like the Winter Soldier, Thanos. Can't even think of many off the top of my head, but those are two of the top ones for me. Or even Killmonger. Loved Killmonger as well. And at the same time, there's another villain in here, Paradox. It felt like he didn't really know when to be serious, or they kind of wrote him like that. And he didn't know when to be silly either. His whole performance to me just fell off. He definitely worked with the comedic aspect of the film, but as a villain, he was just a bit underwhelming and boring, to say the least. It's like both villains to me just really didn't hit in this film as good as they could have. But really, that was all that was amiss for me, guys. not a whole lot, like big multiversal things. It really was its own standalone story for the most part, which was fine. We're gonna go into the conclusion here. Deadpool is a solid film and threequel to the character. Disney was able to bring the same tone and humor that made the first two films so much fun, and with it, they are able to honor the old 20th Century Fox films with it as Disney closes a chapter to start their own chapter with these characters. Despite some writing inconsistencies and missed attempts with the villains of the film, this was arguably the best film since Guardians of the Galaxy 3 and Spider-Man No Way Home. And even though it's not the film to save the MCU, it definitely goes in the right direction to make me excited for future films. And with all that said, I would give this film my final rating of a 4 out of 5. It is a solid film, again, one of the best the MCU has made, and hopefully with the whole restructure this year, Marvel will continue to give us some hits moving forward until we get to the next Avengers films. But yeah, guys, this again was also one of my most anticipated films of the 2024 year. I'll have a list up here of those films of what I've seen so far. Again, the link for that video to check out what I'm most excited for film-wise this year will be in the description below of this video. As always, please comment, like, and subscribe to the channel. And this is Jake from CINECALIBER.